Alright, so everyone and their mother have been showing off Pixel unboxings and first impressions, but I just got my Pixel XL, so while setting it up, here are my early impressions and some predictions for what we might find in future reviews. Getting the phone out of the box, we're well accessorized for charging cables, and I'm happy to see Google include a USB OTG transfer adapter, but the Pixel isn't a Nexus. This is an expensive, consumer-focused phone, so it's disappointing when we don't have headphones in the box. And the only time this phone has felt slow was during the very first boot. This playful animation is, well, playful, but it lasted long enough I was worried my unit might have arrived DOA. Thankfully, I didn't need to use the adapter as I've got plenty of USB-C to USB-C cables, and I can already say the storage limitations on the Pixel will be an issue for our future coverage. Looking at backing up files from the V20, the quantity of footage we need to shoot for a real camera review exceeded the built-in storage of the Pixel. I'll likely need to transfer files at least once while shooting samples here. And once we finish the setup process, we're dropped off on a clean and simple home screen. So it's time for a confession. I was never a huge fan of the Nexus. I understood why it was an important line of phones, and I totally got why other people like them. But the idea of vanilla Android on vanilla hardware just never did it for me. Nothing against the 5X, it's a fine phone, but I'm really hoping the Pixel will be a more interesting home for my Project Fi Sim. And for no good reason, here's a panning shot which doesn't really have anything to do with what I'm talking about. Now, many have already waxed poetically about the design. And we shouldn't be surprised that HTC made a nice looking phone which feels nice in the hand. I can't think of a more trite description for any phone. Like there's some company looking to make gadgets which will slice your hands open when you hold them. But I digress. Getting back to the Pixel, I wasn't particularly digging the idea of the glass panel, and holding it, I'm still not particularly digging the idea of a glass panel, partly because of this edge on the transition. I know myself well enough to know that I'll absent-mindedly keep rubbing away at this seam until I get a case for it. The satin finish on this metal is so nice. I wish the whole phone were made out of that. And unlike glass, it does a remarkable job of hiding your fingerprints. And I'm usually not much bothered by forehead and chin bezels, but Google certainly went out of their way to call attention to them with a white front face. Early impressions on software performance are very encouraging. For the first time in my tech career, I'm liking stock Android more than some of my favorite skins. Swiping up for the app drawer is a very nice evolutionary touch. We've covered some aspects of Nougat already, like improvements to the notification shade and split-screen apps, all very welcome here, and we've seen some people criticize the Google tab up here. But anytime you add gestures to software, you deal with problems of conveyance. How will people know there's something to slide over to? You don't need to hit this tab, but it tells you in a Zune-y kind of way that there's something over here. I'd like to see the same for long pressing on an app shortcut, as I feel iOS also lacks any indication for which apps support that interaction. One of the crown jewel features, Google Assistant, gives off a great first impression. This might actually prompt me to use voice search and controls more than on any previous phones we've tested in the past. And man, does this software scream. I did this little UI tour while downloading and updating apps, and while the phone was warm to the touch, it never got crazy hot, nor did any of the home screens or multitasking stutter a single frame. Even the iPhone 7 will occasionally hitch on multitasking. This is seriously impressive for an Android. Unfortunately, the first listen on headphones I supplied, wasn't particularly impressive. We'll have to test more, but it doesn't seem like Google opted for any of HTC's audio DNA here, which is definitely a disappointment. And an early prediction that this camera will be very good, especially at HDR and slow motion video. And I'm happy to see a bit more control over settings like exposure and white balance, but I'll likely not be declaring it the best camera of the year. It's pretty easy getting it to show that halo ring flare, and I'll be curious to see how Google addresses a hardware issue with a software fix. And that's about where we should leave things off for now. When viewed as the first step in a new platform for Google, there's a lot to like out of the box. You'll go a long way with us when you champion optimization, performance, and support. But we are concerned about the ramifications of trying to make a soft, friendly, high-cost all-rounder in such a competitive phone market. It's not enough to say it'll outsell any Nexus ever made. You don't need to be a genius to make that prediction. But we're all curious to see if Google has landed the right combination of hardware and software to make serious progress in a saturated sales environment.